Hi everyone. So today's math lesson is 8-8 AM and PM. And our I can statement is right here. I can tell time and use reasoning to state if the event is happening in the AM or PM. Using reasoning, that means we're going to figure out what our evidence tells us to solve our problem. Let's take a look at the blue dialog box on Solve and Share. Look at the clock and tell what time Ethan wakes up for school. Write the time on the digital clock and circle morning or evening. Well, right away, I know wake up. That must mean he was asleep. And you go to sleep at night and wake up in the morning. And Ethan is also going to school. I'm gonna underline that part too. He's gonna go to school. And what time do you wake up and go to school? I know I wake up and go to school in the morning, so I'm gonna circle the morning. I already know that part. Let's look at our analog clock. It's telling us the long minute hand pointing down at 6, so I know that there's an imaginary 30 there for 30 minutes. And our short hour hand is right before 7. That means we're still in the 6 o'clock hour. And on our digital clock, it's going to look like this. And I'm using my tablet to write down the answer, so it doesn't look perfect the way it does with my amazing handwriting on the whiteboard in the classroom. Let's go ahead to the boxes at the top of page 486. You can also find this information in the video on PearsonRealize.com. The Visual Learning Bridge is what they call it. Those are those videos with the fun little robot that tells us to choose our answers. Let's look at the boxes at the top of page 486. Right away I can see they highlighted some stuff for us, AM and PM. Let's read that sentence. In the first box, you can use the terms AM and PM to tell about the time. And they're using what's called abbreviations to shorten the words, so it just says AM and PM. And our friend here in the speech bubble is saying, use AM for morning times. I wake up at 8 a.m. And use PM for afternoon or evening times. I go to bed at 8 p.m. You go to bed at nighttime. PM means nighttime or afternoon. In our second box, I eat breakfast at, well, breakfast for you children happens in the morning, and you would eat breakfast at the AM, so you would circle AM. Our clock shows 8:20 on both the analog and digital. Later in the day, you eat lunch at school at 11:45. 11:45 is still in the morning, so I would circle AM. I eat dinner with my family at 6:30 p.m. because you typically eat dinner at nighttime. Let's take a look at do you understand? What might you be doing at 6:15 a.m. and at 6:15 p.m.? So this question is unlike our typical do you understands. They're asking you about your day. What do you usually do at 6:15 in the morning? I bet a lot of you are still asleep. And at 6:15 p.m., either having dinner, doing homework, playing video games, who knows? You're definitely not eating breakfast and waking up, though. When you're finished with do you understand, let's look at guided practice. Complete the clocks so both clocks show the same time. Then circle AM or PM to tell you when you would do each activity. So this is like our lesson from a couple days ago. You're going to look at one clock and then use that information to tell you how the other clock should look. Number 1, ride the bus to school. Well, we don't have school buses at St. Thomas, but if you're going to school, that's usually in the morning. Morning is AM, so I would circle AM. And our hour hand, our little hour hand in blue on the analog clock is not yet pointing at 9. Just after 8, but not quite 9, so it's still 8. And our minute hand is pointing at 9, And we know there's an imaginary 45 minutes right there. So it's 8:45. Guided practice number 2. Do your homework. I hope you're all doing your homework in the evening. So you should be circling PM, because that's when you're supposed to be doing the homework, not in the morning the day before. Okay, our digital clock shows us 4:30. And that means my short hour hand is going to be pointing around at the 4, not before it, but at or a little bit after the 4. And my long hand, well, 6 is the half-hour mark, and a half hour is 30 minutes. So my long minute hand would be pointing right down to 6. So when you're finished with guided practice, you feel good, go ahead and go to independent practice. What you're going to do for numbers 3 through 8 is read what's happening and figure out if it happens in the morning or in the afternoon or nighttime. If it's the morning, you're going to circle AM. And if it's the afternoon or nighttime, you would circle PM. Then, just like in our last couple lessons, you're going to look at which clock is complete and use that to write the time or draw the hands on the other clock. Let's go down to number 9. Jen and Maria have dance lessons at the time shown on the clock. Write the time 2 different ways. Is it AM or PM? And explain. So you have to think about what are 2 different ways you can write the time, just like what we did in the other lesson. And you have to think about, would dance lessons at the time shown on the clock take place before noon or after noon? And how would you know? You're probably going to need to figure out what time that clock is showing before you can answer that question. Then let's look at math practices and problem solving. In number 10, you'll need to figure out, when does school usually start? Right on the hour, just before the hour, or half past the hour? And in number 12, you'll have to think about how many minutes are in between each number on a clock. You can tell by counting the little dashed lines, or I'll give you a hint to our first time lesson, skip counting. What number do we usually skip count by when we're counting on a clock?